for joining and spending some time with us here. Super excited to dive in. And so if you do have any questions, I do thank you. And Genese, we thank you for the amount of questions that we received as far as allowing us to understand what it is you're looking for with context to this webinar. And I saw a lot of amazing questions and some topics that I would love to dive into here today. And so, and also if you just have questions related to anything about how to monitor something relative to your environment, or if you have exciting ideas about how you're currently using solutions like Nagios to monitor your infrastructure, and even have success stories related to use cases related to how Nagios operates out in the field, out in your environments, please let us know. Always excited to work with the community and see all of these ideas grow. So with that said, let's begin. Before we dive into kind of how Nagios XI operates and works, and to go through a live demonstration, we thought it would be nice to kind of explain a little bit of how we got to where we are today. And I noticed in some of the questions, it looks like we have some Nagios users who've been with us for a long journey, and it's nice to see that. So Nagios actually started as far back as 1996. The founder, the creator of Nagios, was a data center and an IT system administrator, and he wanted to have offsite meetings with his group. The issue, of course, the challenge is that when you leave the data center, and you hope to leave the data center, you hope to go home, the issues begin sometimes. And so they went off for a lunch meeting, and when they came back, the servers were on fire. And so his manager said, no more offsite meetings. And so he that night went home and created what was the first iteration, the first pieces of what would then be and now be called Nagios. And it was a very simple application. It was a MS-DOS application that simply pinged out to the servers and then sent him a notification when those issues were occurring, when the pings were timing out. And so it was a very simple application, very simple theory. He opened this up to the world as an open source application, and millions of users saw the immediate use of this. They're looking at this saying, I can grab metrics, I can ping devices, I can write scripts in any language, and I can contribute to this project. And over the course of decades, this product, this solution, was easily adopted into so many systems, from small data centers, from small network closets, up to the largest Fortune 50s and beyond. And so with that legacy, with that rich user group, years later, it was determined there should be an easier way to manage what is normally a command line, a very manual way of getting environments into Nagios. And so more recently, the creator of Nagios decided, I want to create a very easy to use version of this open source software and make it enterprise rich, commercial ready, turnkey. And that's where Nagios XI fits in. And that's what I'm excited to show you today. So then that brings us up to kind of just even a slice of what we're working on today with Nagios XI. And when we were thinking about just some of the higher level bullet points of even current state and what we've been recently producing, even like I said today, we have an increased effort on our mobile interfaces, because that's really handy to be out in the field and acknowledge alerts and see the true health of a network from on the fly. So we're continuing our development into that effort. We've launched multiple operating system support, so CentOS, Ubuntu, Debian, We're kind of expanding to meet the demands of the wide array of use cases and users like yourselves. We're also finishing up, and we'll be developing and delivering later this year a Nagios Core, our open source. Again, very manual but fruitful large project, but Nagios XI, of course, being easier to use and gives you a lot more insight with reports and everything that I'll show you in a moment. But we've built an application that allows you to easily migrate core environments, thousands of devices and metrics and components easily into Nagios XI so that you can get even more powerful results with your monitoring. We're also working on the framework of a true cloud native application. One of the amazing benefits of Nagios and Nagios XI truly is its flexibility and extensibility. You're going to see that in a lot of different ways here today. And most notably, one of them being, we don't limit you in terms of where you want to deploy Nagios XI. We have really easy to deploy virtual machine appliances that you can download right from our site and click in from VMware, Hyper-V, or install from source in a matter of minutes. We like to say get monitoring in 20 minutes or less, and we truly mean that. This application, I'll show, it looks like just from our polls, we have a significant amount of users who are relatively new to Nagios and Nagios XI. So I'll want to show you just how easy that experience is. And we also are developing, we continue to work on additional wizards, which are easy ways to get information from switches, firewalls, printers, cloud applications, things like that. We're constantly evolving and building to meet the demands of what's out there and the pain points and some of the cool things you guys are working on. Nagios XI 6.0 is going to be released in Q1 of 2021, and we're super excited. We're going to be refreshing the user experience, the UX UI, and it's going to be just even more powerful as well. It just takes what we have, which is just a massive engine of unending possibilities, and makes it a little bit more streamlined even yet. But yeah, so we're excited to have you guys along with the journey. So with that said, I would love to hop into a demonstration. Again, I love to see the attendance here. Again, hello everyone. And so if you do have questions or anything, please let us know, and the folks at Genese and us will be able to help you out as much as we can here. And if we don't get to everything, of course, follow-ups, we want to make sure that we're answering to everything and as succinctly as possible. So I thought it would be fitting, maybe the first place to take a look at is just nagios.com. I noticed a number of questions in the survey that was sent out, just simply asked, how do we start? Where's the best place to start and build up a proof of concept, or really dive into the software? So again, we made that super easy. If you go to nagios.com and go under products, here's our products. So just a kind of a quick overview. Today we'll be talking about Nagios XI, which is our turnkey, can monitor anything with an IP address or a DNS or a website name, things like that. We also have a really robust and powerful software that focuses on log aggregation, log collection, and log alerting as well. That's called Nagios Log Server. And kind of special shout out, we have a number, it looks like a number of you are coming from the financial, the banking industry, education, there's a healthcare, there's a lot of verticals that have a lot of specifics to compliance, HIPAA, PCI, Sarbanes. There's the alphabet of compliance, and through what we've seen in the past, we found massive success in being able to support and work within almost any compliance based on our architecture, based on how you can deploy this software in your environment, whether it be in the cloud, whether it be on premise, or even even a hybrid of the two. And so just based on, again, that flexibility. So Nagios Fusion is a product, and I know there was a couple of questions related to this, is because we allow you to have instances in multiple different areas. If you want to have a Nagios XI server, for example, in a on-premise data center, and then a Nagios XI instance running in a cloud or a private cloud, public, anywhere, and getting total visibility into all of your instances, Nagios Fusion is a tool that you can use to see all of those instances in one lens, under one roof. Network Analyzer focuses on the network performance. Nagios XI does a wonderful job of bandwidth utilization reporting. Nagios Network Analyzer takes that to the next level and talks more protocols like JFlow, IPFix, really on the router, the switching layers as well. But like I said, getting into Nagios XI today, and we have a 30-day trial that is everything included, and it allows you to monitor an unlimited amount, just to really allow you to see the flexibility and really get a sense during your proof of concept or evaluations. From here, if you click download free trial, this gives you those options, as I mentioned earlier: Hyper-V, VMware, or even just these simple commands. Copy and paste the install script right into your CentOS, your Ubuntu, Debian, whatever your flavor is that that we support on this. So I just wanted to start by talking about some of those deployment options and pieces like that, because I think it's really important as you start kind of framing up the questions that I would like you to start asking, which is truly, in your environment, start thinking about all of the items that, even considering mission critical, i.e. something that you need to be alerted immediately if something goes down, which team members, which areas, which departments, which branches in what countries or regions should be notified or should be handling these alerts or looking at this performance or be given reports about performance, as well as what you may consider not mission critical, but still as a collective are part of your day-to-day operations. How we license Nagios is easily one of our favorite pieces to speak to, because we have a philosophy here at Nagios, is that we don't want to limit you based on how many things you want to monitor inside of any one device. And so from our pricing perspective, this is a real value. This is an extreme value and an immediate return on investment when you think about being able to grab insights from not only pretty much anything that has an address, IP address or DNS entry, but also just all of the metrics inside of that. So with our open source foundation of product and having that open source stack, um, we have that ability. So with that said, once you download those pre-packaged virtual machine appliances and you spin them up in an environment, from there, the next step truly is navigate to the IP address that you see on the screen during the setup. It will say, congratulations, setup complete. Please access your Nagios XI instance on your web browser. And of course, this can be secured through HTTPS and conforms with all of the kind of standards that you would typically expect in terms of security compliance and things like that. So yeah, so after you log in, and I'm just going to use my Nagios admin login here. What will happen is you'll be presented, for security reasons, it kind of makes sure that I'm actually human here. And what I'm going to do is get back in here. Okay. Akin to the Microsoft blue screen, right? All right. So after you log in, you'll be presented with a notice box. And this notice box just gives you just a brief what has happened perhaps since you've last logged in. Just a nice glance over of some of the unhandled problems or incidents in your environment. So just for clarity purpose, unhandled means that there is a challenge, there's an issue that Nagios has identified, and a system administrator, a user that you have set up for Nagios XI, be it yourself or a teammate, has not acknowledged the alert. Once the alert is acknowledged and you're, you have the ability to create notes and, talk with your teammates inside of this as far as incident resolution related to this, or have these escalated into a ticket management system, ServiceNow, PagerDuty, a number of environments that you may be familiar with or using currently. The idea here is that it allows you to be able to understand what's been handled by teammates, what hasn't, in that sense. So after you log in, what you see immediately is what we call the home dashboard. The home dashboard is a fully customizable dashboard that is on a per user level. So for example, this login has access, so this may be relevant information for me to be able to get a glance over of what switch ports are doing okay, what's plugged in, what's not, maybe some high visibility of what's going green, red, yellow in terms of warning states. Is something in a critical state of catastrophe, or is it maybe in a warning state something might be in a problem? So this dashboard, again, is stuff that might be static, i.e. things I always want to see, or maybe even things that I have, maybe I want to keep a look at. So I'm actually going to log into my personal Nagios XI instance. And so I like to see things that are static. I always want to see what still is unhandled, and maybe some things that I want to maybe tackle or address, at least acknowledge. And then I have some things that I maybe always want to take a look at. For example, firewall packet loss between all of my firewalls. We'll get into how to dashboard and view this, but it's super powerful within that. And then maybe I just want to have some information that is temporary. So this gives you a great scratch pad. There's a lot more to dashboards that we'll get into, but I figure the easiest place to really dive in, I want to focus on two main aspects for this demonstration. The first is getting data into Nagios XI. What does that truly look like? How easy is that? How do you build out your environment? From there, we'll talk about how to visualize that data, how to contextualize it, how to find root cause and correlation, and really making this making sense of this data. And then we'll get into the kind of third bucket, which is administration management, some things to kind of take a look at as you're diving into this. But from the top navigation, you'll see this link called configure. And configure, we have configuration wizards. One of the most powerful pieces of a monitoring solution should be getting data into the environment as quickly as possible. So we've made that super easy. We have over, I think, about 70, 75 built-in wizards that, just from what we know and from what we've worked with thousands of customers and environments around the world, these wizards truly do speak to at least 90% or more even of an environment. I have a lot of complicated IoT devices and applications and some really unique things in my environment, and from what I used to do as a data center architect for the better part of 15 years before coming to work for Nagios. And I can personally say that almost everything I needed to do was inside these wizards. And I say that confidently because some of these wizards are very easy to see the immediate, hey, I have Windows desktops, I have Windows servers, I have a Google Cloud environment, I have a AWS instance, I have you know, a DHCP server, Exchange servers, not only monitor the Exchange service, i.e. the individual application that's running, let's test the mail systems as well. Database, let's talk about databases, because think about all of the power that you can easily adopt into monitoring and performance management. I was just giving a presentation with IBM yesterday, and talking about the ease of integration with IBMI relative to this, the user base was like, I can't believe we can do this. Think about all the metrics from a sales, a marketing, a distribution, warehousing, SKUs, all of those things on a day-to-day that not only affect IT, but may impact other departments in your organizations. With being able to monitor and run queries and do that inside of databases, huge thing. So again, the reason why I'm spending a little bit more time on this is because I want you to think about monitoring, because we truly do think about monitoring from the 360, from the holistic view. We really truly want you to monitor everything, because it all matters in terms of not just monitoring the database, not just monitoring the website, the Apache service, but let's also monitor the website itself. Let's monitor the performance of the website from the outside in, because it's kind of think about the back of the house, right? So there's the databases, the power consumption of the servers, the fans, the, you know, all of the physical pieces, the disk utilization. But then also let's run synthetic tests on your billing portals, on your customer portals. You know, you mentioned banking, and you mentioned you know, just all, I was ecstatic. I love to see all of the different industries that you're in, because this all is agnostic. It all speaks to these environments. So it's just a piece of this, right? And having all of those having all of that metric data grouped together and be able to report on it and get alerts based on the percentage health even of all of those systems. Yeah, I could go on for days about this. I'm super excited all the time about this software, and I hope you are too, because this truly is a peace of mind component with your day-to-day operations. But I do want to segue into something that we you know, getting data into Nagios XI, where I like to call us an open book. It's very easy to get data into Nagios from from many different ways. And I want to speak a little bit about how to address this with compliance, with i.e. HIPAA, PCI, things like that, how to address it from topological differences, i.e. there's network firewalls, there's just differences in terms of maybe a laptop is offline, you want to have it send data when it's online. There could be a number of reasons why we want to maybe talk about an agent versus using protocols like SNMP, SSH, FTP, HTTP, JSON, XML. All of these protocols that I mentioned are part of even like you know, are part of a wizard and easy to adopt. But let's talk about an agent, because that's a common question that I see here. And we have an agent, and it's a very powerful agent, and I actually have it installed on my laptop here. And so to get to more information about our agent, nagios.org/NCPA. We have the links in the wizards. And if I were to search for NCPA here, I just want to quickly go into this. What this, and here's the link for this. And there are a number of wizards that also utilize this because of just how powerful it is. But NCPA has its own API, has its own advanced metrics, even shows you real-time second-by-second metrics that you can log into remotely to those end devices, which is super easy to be able to get information. The cool part is you can even add components to this wizard. Question came in about, can we create our own wizard? You absolutely can. We have users that create their own you know, wizards and components. Same with our agent. You can add plugins. You can create your own scripts that run on this agent, and then can bring that information into Nagios. You can write your own plugins in any language that you're comfortable with. And you can submit those scripts, if you would like, into what we call our Nagios exchange. And so as you're thinking about monitoring, as you're getting devices in, there may already be a wizard or a plugin, a script that someone else in the community has already written for the type of device, the type of application that you want to monitor. So I did want to give a special shout out to this website as well. Very powerful, just thousands of plugins that speak to very specific pieces and components inside your network as well. So I want to get into this agent. So I've installed this agent, and the one thing as I'm setting up the agent is it allows me to either have Nagios XI, my server, actively reach out to my laptop and get information. I can also set up the wizard to receive passive checks, i.e., or to send passive checks, i.e., the laptop is in its own network, its own partition perhaps, or its own DMZ, and it can send data to a Nagios XI instance. So think about that in terms of flexibility and truly how this addresses a number of security concerns, things like that in your network. But I'm going to, and a token, just for context here, as you see me type that in, that's a predefined, it's a predefined password that I've set up alongside the deployment of my agent. Super useful, kind of shout out to that. Our agent is compatible with a number of different operating systems. And so mine is Windows. It will auto detect which one there is. But what's happening now that you see on the screen is the Nagios XI instance reached out to my laptop. It grabbed all of the information from my laptop as far as metrics, and it brings that and it displays it here. So what I have now is I can name this, laptop Garrett, just something that organizationally makes sense to what I'm doing. And then anything that has a checkbox now, I can choose to monitor it. So maybe I really want to have CPU usage monitored. It shows me what that current usage was at the time of grabbing. So this allows me a little bit more insight about what I should benchmark. Maybe because I'm on this Zoom call at 39%, maybe I want to have a warning at 80% and a critical at 90. The reason why this is important is I can have Nagios send alerts to specific teams or do certain actions or fire off certain scripts based on warning or critical. In other words, I could actually set up Nagios, and we have customers that love and really depend on this function to kill services, turn off, disable functions of a server, or reduce overhead on a server based on warning status, and then spin up or enable additional servers dynamically on critical state. Think about that for cloud applications. A number of you are using dynamic cloud pools and resources, S3 instances, buckets, things like that. Our customers love being able to dynamically address performance issues in near real time with the observed behaviors. Maybe if, for those of you who are using terminal services, for example, user count is certainly one that you could use in this case. If I have 200 users, that might be a warning state, and 250 is my critical state, I might want to address my load balancer or my pool in a certain way. So this allows that. Or if you have a web server, in my case, I was like, I want to have 0 and 1. So this alerts me and sends me a text message if anyone logs into my web server. And it's a good reminder for myself of saying, oh, I didn't log out of my web server, which I have a dashboard of Nagios XI right up on my screen, and I noticed that I did not log out. So Nagios XI totally notified me of that. Memory, same thing, RAM, swap usage. If I had a USB thumb drive plugged into my laptop or any additional disks, those would populate here as well. So I just have my C drive. Again, current usage. And Nagios XI will actually predictively show me or send me an email or a text message or do a custom script based on the observed and predicted trends too. And I'll show you that in a little later here. This was a question I got about network questions here. is how to monitor, interfaces and utilization. This is where this begins, is let's monitor the thresholds for security and compliance purposes. This all plays a story as well, is I want to make sure that my thresholds, if there's something on Wi-Fi or a VPN tunnel that should be standby and isn't, or should be down or should be up, this is where I can define those metrics. Services, same thing, but this is actually even more interesting, is if you click this little icon here, it scanned my system, remember, from that agent, and shows me everything that's running and stopped as not only a service but also a process. So maybe I really, for my laptop, I have to have the Win32 time service running. Its expected status is running. I should have it running. I want to monitor that. And look at this. Just with a few clicks, I can add any amount of services that I want to monitor inside of this application. Think processes, Apache, IIS, think the DNS servers that you're running out in the field, think applications beyond this. And then also, let's look at processes, because in Windows, that's a little different, right? And kind of the common joke, everyone went remote. And so the joke that I have for you today, I'm a terrible comedian, but the joke might be that, you want to monitor whether or not your employees are using Outlook and send an alert if Outlook or the printer service or application is not running, things like that. But real world environments of, is that process running? Windows counters specific to Windows, massively beneficial. Think of all the Windows counters that I see that you guys are using out there. Again, add any amount of them. Our licensing for perpetual Nagios XI licensing has no limit in this respects. Our only real limit here is the hardware, that the resources that you provide the Nagios XI server, if that makes sense. So this depends on what type of storage you're providing, how much CPU. This really does run lean, and so we see users. Our kind of best recommendation is about 20,000 services, which are these items inside, and how frequently it will depend. But we do have customers that exceed the 40, 50,000 on one instance. But again, it just depends on how frequently, and we'll show you what that looks like in a second here as well. As well as if I've written additional plugins inside my environment, I would like to add that. So this is going back to that monitoring utility, adding my own scripts that's located on the laptop itself. Again, even more ability there. So that's this screen. If I click next, every wizard is the same from here on out as well. It's just simply, so far we've just asked the question, what do we want to monitor inside of my laptop, for example? The next, step 3, asks the question, how often to monitor it. Could be 1 minute, could be 60 minutes, could be a day, however critical this device is. The next question asks, if the Nagios XI server has detected a problem, how often do you want to recheck? Up to how many times before sending a notification? Especially as you're setting up the system, you get your email, you get your text, your cellular number into this. A common kind of first step is reducing the amount of false alerts or just the alert fatigue, too many alerts. This is a great step in this direction, because I don't want to receive an alert maybe if this laptop CPU spikes for only one check. But I do want to know if the CPU is at 100% for over 5 minutes, for example. So it's something to be aware of, and it allows you to reduce the amount of alerts and really fine tune how you're getting alerted. Step 4 asks you the question, who or whom do you want to be notified? Or do you want to notify if this laptop is having an issue, for example? So maybe Frank and Steve are part of my team that works on laptops. And then I can also bring this into groups. So if I had, maybe this is a web server and I could say web team, things like that, I can choose who gets notified within that. So super useful. I strongly recommend setting up contact groups as a way to kind of help out and ease of management here. Step 5 asks the question, how do I organize this? Is this laptop part of a servers group? Is it part of my firewalls? Probably not. So this allows you to not only group like device, similar devices, but then I can go in and I can report on these things later. As well as service. Is it a web process? Is it a, part of my cellular team, my IoT services, things like that? And then parent host, also take a look at this and take note, because what this allows you to do is contextualize, where does this laptop actually sit in the network? Is there a dependency? Is another way of asking that. And what this allows you to do is visualize this data, but also it won't send you an alert if something above it or plugged into it or needs to be plugged in is down. So here's an example here on my own system. If this firewall, if my Chicago firewall went down, I don't want to get an alert for everything that's underneath that, that's plugged into that location. So that allows you to just rapidly, and your team to rapidly see that alert and say, oh, the firewall's down. I don't need to receive an alert for everything, the hundreds of devices or thousands of devices that are underneath there. It's your choice, but I definitely recommend that. Great way to keep things nice and clean. And that's it. Honestly, from there, you can save this as a template if you want to run these later on, or I can simply click apply. And literally from that, it's in my system and it starts to get, it begins to be monitored based on how frequently I've asked it to be monitored. And if this is a thing, so this is another thing that I'd like to kind of highlight is, if you have thousands of devices that are the same, we see this a lot in healthcare, we see this a lot in education, multiple campuses, things like that. Let's say you have 200 network switches. You would run through, for example, the network switch and router wizard, which seamlessly gets all of those switch ports, the bandwidth utilization, all of those, all that in there. But then what I would strongly recommend is use the bulk host cloning and import. Because what this wizard allows you to do is take any one of these metrics. For example, I have an access point, a wireless access point in Chicago. Very common. Let's say I have 4,000 of these devices, or 1,200. We see this all the time. I can get this entire environment in my network, and then I can choose which metrics I want to get into. Maybe I don't want uptime, but I want how many, what my channel utilization is, how many clients are connected, things like that. And all I have to do is, and this works with CSV, this works with, just typing in from commands, things that are like comma separated lines. I can start to build out this environment to say, yeah, basically filling all this out. As soon as I click next, what this is going to do is immediately add all of these properties, these types of metrics into all of these, all of the IP addresses or DNS entries that I've specified. So nice little quick access there. We do also have what we call the auto discovery. What this allows you to do is run scans on your network and looks at what's existed, what has changed in that environment. And so here I can see all the scans that I performed, and you can schedule these scans, of course. And then from there, it allows you to add the specific metrics that you've liked. This scans the initial kind of common ports, common protocols, but our wizards are additive. So if I wanted to run another wizard on top of this Linux server later, as long as it's named the same, I can add any amount of metrics, any amount of services on that as well. And so it's just really additive, really scalable in this sense. And to that, going back just a second to that piece of scalability and part of that license, again, is a huge benefit. Think about, I want to get something less red. Here we go. So a number of you are hosting data centers, hosting co-locations, or renting from these spaces or network closets. So for example, here's a power distribution unit, one of those big racks with like the little plugs that you can power cycle and get load status on. Well, for our licensing, that's the IP address. So the license is only counting one device. Think about all of the services in this. This is a 24 outlet power strip, as well as load usage within each one of the phases. So if I want to get information relative to each one of these phases, the licensing really is flexible and powerful enough to allow me to do that. Again, we don't want to hold you back. We don't want to limit your monitoring potential in this sense. What you see here is performance graphs. So if I click into, now that I'm monitoring, right? So getting data into Nagios XI. Now let's talk about actually getting um, uh, into visualizing this data. So it's easy to kind of start with anytime you see this little graph, you can just immediately click in, and this will show you a little bit more of an adaptive method to what this metric is showing for performance. So this is how many tenths of watts or something is being used here. If this is information that I want to have my boss, my stakeholders, my management know about, and this is relevant to my job, I can click this little hamburger button and click export, right? So throughout the interface and anywhere in here that you see, you see that button. And so I can go into, for example, a host status, and I can start adding and customizing this. But truly, even like ping statistics, things like that, I can start filtering. I can choose which metric I want. Again, click through and then export as PNG, JPEG, even CSV in some cases. But if it's as easy as that, I can email this to a boss and say, hey, we need more money. I don't know. But if this is something that I want to see all the time, and I would like you to take note of this little blue up arrow, this asks add to dashboard. If you click that, I can name this anything I want, and I can deploy this to any dashboard, including that home dashboard that I showed you earlier. So with a couple of clicks of a mouse, I can start building out my dashboards. And dashboards for knock centers and all of these really complex environments where you want to have a larger screen. This is really applicable to, again, on a per user level or per department level. You can deploy these dashboards, and you can take little modules and different visualizations. Over the years, we've seen a massive amount of just different ways that this is being that this works. And so we want to I'll help you visualize your network however you'd like. And so building out these dashboards is essential. I mentioned earlier, I have a little tablet that's only 7 inches, or basically the size of my hand, and it displays just the basic information that I want in a dashboard. And so if this is something that I'm curious about or want to take a look at all the time, certainly possible. Including dashboards and any of the tactical operations screens in this interface, I can take all of this information, and if you see this little corner, this little blue icon here, if I select this on any screen, so I want to take a look at my bird's eye view, for example, and I'm going to click the little lights out because I want a dark theme. But if I click this button, immediately this removes the navigation. Now, if I click F11 or full screen, I now have a full screen view of anything inside of my environment. Furthermore, we also have a dark theme available. So if you go into any user, or you can even apply it globally, but I can click Modern Dark, and now I have dark theme. So this is great for, again, those knock screens, those large screens. You don't want to have that eye strain of having to look at, a lot of data throughout the day. We even have that visualization for you. And it's just a cleaner way of getting full screened, and size appropriate, updates to your environment, things like that. So I want to skip out of dark theme just because I want to get back to that. So that's the dashboarding area. Let's talk about the reporting quickly to kind of show even just a little bit more beyond, because you have stakeholders, you have management, decision makers, and including yourselves. You want to just understand what's going on in your network. Well, with Nagios XI, we have a number of very useful, quick views of what's happening, what's causing more problems in the network, what should be addressed at the time of day, what's happening throughout the time, even like state history, tail of the tape, we call it, what happened when. And you can include both hard states and soft states. You can include different host groups. You can drill down into specific hosts. This allows you to really run reports in a way that makes sense for your organization. bandwidth usage. Look at trends throughout the given calendar year of what's happening, including just consumption. Bandwidth is starting to get capped in some regions, and so this is really important information to know. And if this is something that you would like a stakeholder to know, or yourself, or just a nice reminder, anywhere in the screen there is a little button that says schedule this report. Clicking this allows me to ask the question of who should be receiving this. I can send this to my team, specific groups, distribution groups. I can choose to have this via PDF, and then some of these actually allow JPEG, things like that, and then a message of, hey, this is happening weekly, monthly, daily, at what time, and then this will faithfully send these reports out. We see this very commonly with SLA reports. And so this is a big piece with compliance and with contracts, things like that. So I'm going to take a look at maybe my firewall group, and I can choose what SLA I want. And I'm going to be very tough on myself and say, for last month, 5 nines, let's see if, yeah, I'm failing across the board. That's awesome. But here's something that's interesting. If I took this firewall, for example, and if I can actually, so if I want to take my Geneva firewall and I want to run that SLA, not only does it do the SLA report for that firewall, I also get SLA stats on each one of the interfaces. If this was a server, each individual metric will give you an SLA as well. So that's absolutely possible. Question came in about, can you change the notification interval on the fly? You absolutely can. This is something that is in our core configuration manager. This is kind of the engine. So think about all of the questions you have about specifics related to customization. It most likely is in here, and massively powerful. So bulk modifications tool, I want to do a special highlight to this as you're building your network. So going back to getting data into your network, I can take any one of these interfaces, any one of these pieces that I've put in the wizard or as I've customized or built, and I can say, you know, that notification interval was the question, right? Can I change that? Yes, I can. Maybe I want this to be 80 minutes. I can select any of the hosts that I want to add to this, and I can say add the selected and close, and as soon as I click save, that's going to happen immediately. This saves so much time on an ongoing basis. This is part of our enterprise features, but this pays for itself in a matter of like moments. If you use, and if you're building out this network, think the hundreds of devices that, you know, you might need to change or even rename or organize in a specific way. Think about adding users to different contact groups on the fly or different services. Absolutely a powerful piece to that. We've tried, you know, throughout the years, we've had so many different ways of visualizing information that's relative to your organizations and what that looks like. Here's another example, is the capacity planning, really applicable for disk usage, metrics that you're wanting to really keep a keen sense on as far as what's happening when. And so if I had my security and I had a disk usage, what does that look like over time? This may be, yeah, this is a recycled drive. So the idea is that this will actually take anything you see in blue is going to show what has existed in the past as far as our recorded data, and then anything in the, maybe I'll go 3 months, anything in gray is going to be a prediction about what usage is going to exist in the future, using several different types of algorithms or extrapolation methods as well. I actually set this up for myself, and I was running a live stream with recording to disk, and it knew that I was doing this on specific intervals, and it sent me a text message that said, hey, based on the warning and critical thresholds that you've defined, I'm going to send you a message. And it said, hey, on April 13th at this time, you're going to run out of disk use. So I'm like, that's actually accurate. That will happen based on my usage of the system. So and again, this is something, again, that I can schedule the report, or I can even add it to my favorite reports, things like that. This star icon everywhere in the interface as well allows you to get back to that screen immediately inside of my favorites. This applies to anything in the network that you would like to see maybe on an ongoing basis. if you're constantly going into reports, SLA reports, or just different graphs, it allows you to take that information. So I'm going to actually navigate to the Graph Explorer, for example, and maybe time stack. If I want this to be visible all the time, I just click that little add to favorites, and now this screen is right in there. Now I can switch between my server room temperature, and I can observe the temperature of the room, and then I can switch back to Graph Explorer and get back to my time stack graph. So just another easy way to do that. This time stack graph performance, while I'm here, is actually a really useful tool to say. This asks the question, how is a specific device or a metric performing against itself over time? So I'll show you what this looks like. So already you can start to see a trend. What I'm doing here is I'm going to go to 3 weeks. This is the CPU usage to my VoIP server, and this allows me to very quickly identify anomalies or just unexpected or just trends. This could have been a one-off batch process that occurred, but it looks like my CPU usage is it's consistently spiking during times of call center time, things like that where I'm having heavy load. So this allows you to correlate in terms of the metric of whatever you're looking for, against itself again over time. If I wanted to contextualize and find correlation, not with time necessarily, but with other things in the network, that's where the multi-stack graph comes in. So I can take that metric of CPU usage, and maybe I want to also add the bandwidth perspective to it. I'm very bad at naming my interfaces here, as you can tell. So hopefully you guys, take note from my lesson here, but I'm going to take now my server from an application server, and then maybe I want my backup. Maybe this is relevant to what I'm trying to, to try to correlate. If this is information, I can take any amount of metrics and compare them in a graph, and I can start to build that out in a way that maybe visually makes a little bit more sense for what I'm trying to do at any time. And again, if this is information that I'd like to see on a dashboard, that little up arrow is right here for me, and I can add this and deploy this to any dashboard that I would like. So yeah, that's the kind of the piece of more visualizations, kind of thinking about more of the mapping elements to this. We do support Google Maps. We have our a little bit easier map to kind of follow along with as well. You can run GPS coordinates with anything that allows you to kind of overlay and get metrics there. We have a number of just different visualizations to how you want to, like I said, visualize and contextualize your environment. Into that. This question came in, can you show what are the services inside the service group? So you can actually, so under, if you go to home, and then, so if I just click service status and host status, this shows me everything that's in my environment, as far as, and I can kind of filter and run searches. But because I have host groups and service groups, I can also run, again, those reports, or I can drill in and I can get these little summaries specific to, or I can run actions specific to a group. So for example, my firewall group, I might want to just look at this information of just the services as well as the hosts inside of that group. So just different ways of drilling into and organizing what that looks like. So the database queries, I would love to show you what that looks like. I was actually going through, and for NDA I didn't have a live demonstration of a database query, but to run through that is actually quite easy from within whatever database you are comfortable with or using. But how this actually works is if you have, for example, a MySQL server, again, it's going to ask you for those, for the IP address, the port of that server, right, or of that instance of that service, and then your username password that you've set up that's secure and has the right permissions to be able to access this, and then the database can, and then the next screen will then allow you to actually add, and I know I'm going to probably hit a timeout to this. I'm just going to do just so that you can kind of see what this query looks like here. So from here, this MySQL, it comes with built-in metrics, connection times, uptime, how many open connections. These are all kind of universal metrics related to performance of a database. So, and then there are query wizards that you can add on top of this that will actually run those specific queries. I was working with a customer a couple of months ago that actually wanted to run billing statement queries for the accounting department. Think about how cool that is for you in a sysadmin role and network engineering mode to be able to go to your boss in other departments and say, hey, I've been able to extract information from these queries from this database, and I can deliver on reports, monthly, weekly, daily reports, or even just alerts based on specific metrics inside of that. Otherwise, this is an extreme piece of value with with being able to get the performance side of that. Alongside the performance of this, a big piece that's been coming up recently is application monitoring, and what application monitoring means to, to you. And with our API, we have an extreme flexibility with not only an API that might exist in an appliance or an application that you are wishing to monitor, but we also have our own API that's very extensible. A lot of customers, especially with cloud instances and automation, think Ansible and some of these pieces that allow you to kind of flexibly scale your infrastructures, whether it be in the cloud or on premise. These commands are integral in as part of that. As far as get, post, and delete, you can on the fly and automatedly run commands. And even what's cool here is this actually gives me the pre-built curl command with examples. This is live. This is relative to my key and my system and my user, right? Because this API key is generated on a per user basis. So this allows me to run and get information into and out of Nagios in a real-time basis with these configuration references. I can change host service properties, I can add devices, I can mute them. So as you spin up servers dynamically, get them into Nagios, get them as part of your monitoring behavior, and then remove them from your environment when they're not active or when you scale down based on demands for your customers or your needs, things like that. So the other piece to this with application, and like I said, I implore you to kind of look through the wizards as kind of like an idea store and run through all the protocols. What does the application speak? What language? Is it HTTP? Is it running to log file? We can monitor the amount of occurrences inside of a log file specific to string data that you're looking to extract on that. You can take the logs and put them into Nagios log server and get real-time alerts based on filters, based on components like that as well. But you can also group these any devices, any service, and you can report on the percent health of those devices as well. And so what you see here with the bullseye is it's an essential member. So I can group things in my environment and I can mark them as if this goes down, then everything is going to go down. So it allows you to, again, say, hey, maybe 92% is okay. This is really good for load balancers. I'm looking at you guys in the banking industry and in some of those larger, you have a lot of cloud resources that are in a pool or perhaps a load balancer. Mark your load balancers, plural, because I'm assuming you have an active HA load balancer environment for this scenario. Mark those as essential, because if those go down, your stack might go down, your application might go down. But maybe it's okay to have 2 or 3 of your load balance servers be in a problem state. We love that. We don't want you to receive maybe alerts based on these. We want you to be able to fine tune how you react to these alerts. And so with any of these, you're allowed to then set custom thresholds and custom event handler scripts to be able to do actions based on this performance in addition to specific incidences on a per service and per user level. So yeah, that's I wanted to, how are we doing for time here? I know I kind of want to make sure I'm Mary, if you want to hit me up here to just make sure that I'm doing okay here and how much I have remaining. I want to be cognizant of that, and I want to make sure that we have a good amount of Q&A on this. So are there any use case examples of using Nagios XI for the database service? Absolutely, and honestly, with every instance that we see that we truly find success with customers, that is an integral part of that. So it really just depends on what type of queries, what type of applications, and database queries you're looking to achieve. A lot of customers and users and organizations really want to start at that database level and just get the performance metrics relative to that. But again, a database is a database, right? It's kind of an application in that sense. So think about the database as a service or a process. So you also want to monitor that. You also want to monitor the CPU usage that exists on the hosts of that database, or the memory utilization, or the wait times, or the IOPS, things like that. You also want to look at the chassis if you're managing a physical architecture to that. What is the power utilization? What is the wattage? Things like that, the power consumption, the heat, the thermal dissipation, stuff like that. If the device, at Nagios, we're great at saying yes. The big piece is whether or not that device has the capability of getting information out. For example, my UPSs, my battery backups, they have potentially the capability through USB, and then there's some methods of being able to get that out. It all depends on that device and that ability to extrapolate using common protocols, SNMP version 1, 2C, and 3, using, like I said, SSH to run queries and commands to get status information, things like that. So, yep. So, yeah, I want to move back to our PowerPoint here and get back on track here. Want to kind of move along here with this, and we'll get more information in the FAQ or the Q&A portion here. But here's just some examples of even just some customers that we've had that kind of speak to some of the use cases, and from some of the survey pieces. We have a large university here in Minnesota that we work with quite well on, and they just wanted clarity, additional clarity into the places that their current or their previous infrastructure had limitations with modularity, modules, and kind of segments, using multiple monitoring instances, different versions, different types. We see that all the time, and we love being able to respond and have the ability to get that all under one roof, all under one application. So they definitely saw a huge value with being able to scale Nagios XI to such a large degree of a university and some of these, thousands of nodes, thousands of devices, and their associated services with that. Watch Communications, same thing. They had thousands of devices across their customer base, and they've wanted more insight than just, is it up or down? Right? Because now we're into the performance piece to this. They are into IoT. They're into things that might be a small metric, but impacts mission critical applications upstream. It's expensive to dispatch technicians. And so knowing what specifically is happening at each one of these places is a big piece. So yeah. And we have like I said, our scalability has given us the ability to speak to organizations as small as 1 to 5 employees, and 50 to 100 devices, up to tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of devices. Yesterday, I was talking to a customer that had 2.3 million service checks. Think about that, 2.3 million services that they're monitoring. And that was mainly successful because of our flexible architecture of being able to get data in and out of multiple instances of Nagios XI and being able to scale that on their terms. We have offline installations, so we meet a lot of defense contractors, security, SOC requirements, things like that really speak to, I can't have this device go up. We don't grab user information. We don't want it. We want you to be able to enjoy your data. This is on your terms. We will have a cloud solution to be able to accommodate that in a private and a secret, in a secured environment as well. But we really are as flexible as your environments. Yeah. So going back to pricing, again, pricing by the node, a node being a device with an IP address or fully qualified domain name or FDQN, or website URL, for example, that you would like to monitor. You saw that in practice with the demonstration and really speaks to that ability to get, and again, going back to like database queries and just looking at all the performance of all the disks and all the processes. Just grab everything, because honestly, it's not just grabbing everything for the sake of monitoring everything. There's a purpose, there's an intent behind it, and we see that, and just being as candid and as truthful as possible. We truly do mean that, because if you have 100 devices, if you have 100 virtual machines, we see this commonly. I have 100 virtual machines in my cloud, and I want to monitor that. My question always is going to be, okay, you have 100 virtual machines, you have 100 applications. I kind of forecast there's 300 devices, there's 300 things that are around that, potentially, right? There's mission critical pieces that lie outside of that, both physical and virtual. And because of our pricing and that extreme value, we're at a position of being able to say that is a return on investment, and we grow with you. If you need additional licenses as you scale this out, we're here with you. We just add, have that built into our pricing flexibility to be able to dynamically, be able to add additional into that. So what comes with a license? This is an important piece. Is you get 1 year of maintenance, which includes all of our updates. I talked earlier about our innovation strategies moving forward, where we've actually doubled our size of our company this year, and we're going to keep growing. We're very we're very excited about what next year is going to bring, and beyond, and the next, so to continue this journey. Also comes with, we're here for you, right? It comes with 1 year of ticket support, which also includes up to 10 incidences. What is an incident? It's basically an issue, right? So we don't want to limit based on the severity of that issue, and so, and just from feedback that really goes a long way. That incorporates so much of some of the ongoing, some of the opportunities, some of the things that we want to work with you on to get more information into your environment that's relevant to your job duties, responsibilities, and organization. Access to Nagios customer-only support form. We have an amazing community. We have an amazing open source community that is a free, as part of that open source, but we have an even larger community in terms of our customers. But we also actively monitor this with really impressive SLA times with response. We have a whole team. You have a dedicated support team as well with your license, but they are also just monitoring the forms and responding immediately to what you're kind of wanting to think about, or some of the challenges or some of the opportunities that you have. This is a perpetual license. So, in terms of all the SaaS subscriptions, things like that that's out there, our renewal for our annual support and maintenance is very cost effective. But as part of that perpetual license, it's yours. You have access to over 5,000 plus free add-ons, going back to that exchange in terms of the community and all of that. We're here with you to be able to diagnose and really understand your network as well. As just to speak more into that easy, product integration, speaking to having our support work with you on some of the tools and resources that you're using out there. We've seen it all because we've done it all, kind of a thing. And so there's usually a best recommendation, and there's best paths in terms of how to get systems to talk. So yeah, we want to help you. Each license, this is very important, each license comes with 3 instances. So think of them as 3 different installs of Nagios XI potentially for each one license. The first is a production. So the production instance is actively checking and alerting you and monitoring and doing all of that. That's your main, instance. A disaster recovery instance is available for those HA active passive environments where, and HA means something, high availability means something different to everyone. So we don't want to limit you in terms of what that looks like. So if you have in your environment a hypervisor that has some of that environment, this instance is to accommodate that, whether it be DRDB or something in S3, Azure, things like that. And then my favorite is the testing environment, because the last thing you want to break in an environment by doing some global configurations or writing some scripts or having some fun is your production monitoring instance. Because at the heart of it, Nagios XI is your extra employee, is your coworker who's always hanging out and checking everything. So we love when customers use that testing environment, that testing instance, to really try out and add and play with things and develop things and work with. And it also great to be able to test upgrades and just different migration paths, things like that. So we don't want to limit you. This is something that we love as far as our offering is those 3 instances as well. So yeah. For the actual pricing piece, licenses start at a 100 node license, and it's for less than 2,000 USD, which is an extreme value, like I said, because think about all the services, think about all those web applications, your client portals, all of those pieces that play together to the strengths of what it is you do best for your organization. And so we're an extreme value with that. And so I implore you to contact Genese for the Genese team, who is, again, thank you guys so much for allowing me to speak enthusiastically here about Nagios XI. They are lovely to work with and really technically knowledgeable too as far as information. So if you have any questions about licensing, pricing, things like that, please reach out to them, and they can talk more about all of these benefits and what that journey looks like. So yeah, so we have a little bit of time here for some Q&A, it looks like, and yeah.
Hi, Garrett. So there are a few questions here. I have answered some of them myself by text, but
Sure.
I would like you to answer some of them as well. So
Yeah.
one question from Dilly Maharjan: is agent pushable from server or need to download and install on client machine?
That is a great question. That is a great question. So the agent is pushable. We have a built-in feature on this, and I want to go back to, and we're always, there's a lot of ways of doing this. And we have a built-in feature in Nagios XI that allows you to input as many of the machines in a CSV compatible method, and then choose operating system. Windows is going to be coming up in the next couple of months. We're going to have a valid a Windows method for deployment that's going to play well with Active Directory and deployments thereof. But it works across Solaris, Mac OS and Mac OS X, and Linux. Several flavors of Linux, of course. This runs on the power of Ansible. And then as soon as you put in authorization, as far as as far as credentials that are capable of sending that, then this Ansible script will run through and deploy that. You can actually check the deployment status, and you can even update the agents through this as well when there's updates. We're constantly improving the product based on your feedback as our relationship grows. Yeah. But that's a great question. So, and we see it through a lot of different ways, depending on the organization, depending on the tool sets. Some use just different versions of automation tools and things like that. But yeah, we wanted to make it easy to have that in there. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Garrett. So there's another question from Anil Pandey. Has Nagios integrated with MRTG?
That's a good question. I've heard, and actually a couple of days ago, I think we had talked about that with one of my support techs. That's something that I'm going to want to confirm with and follow up with you guys on specifics about. And if there's something too that you would like specifics with MRTG on, if you're looking to do as a POC, proof of concept, let us know too, so I can do a little bit more context, provide more, answer for that one.
Sure, guys. So there is another question from Raj Kumar.
Mhm.
So he is looking to monitor VoIP phones and SIP phones.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So here's what I would recommend on this, because I truly do believe that monitoring should be done from multiple angles. We call them sources of truth, multiple points of truth or data, right? So for my own personal environment, I have a bunch of phones, VoIP phones. And what I'm doing is I'm actually monitoring the VoIP, the jitter, and then the MOS score, which if you work in the VoIP telecommunication, that just means how human readable is how's the clarity of the call. With Nagios XI, it's actually built into the software to get that information. And so there are a couple of phones on my network that are out in the countryside, and that's a big important piece for me, is to know that the quality of the call at any point in time is where it needs to be. But here's the thing, so you can monitor if the phone has the capability of getting information out of, for example, HTTP, monitoring the responsiveness of the phone, or in just monitoring the ping to that device is also just valuable beyond all measures, because you can grab information like this. I would also probably, if you have a PBX, a VoIP server, I would absolutely monitor if it's asterisk or QPBX or 3CX, whatever you're using for that piece. I would absolutely monitor call queues, queue depth, on hold times, all of that from databases, from the SSH, all that kind of stuff. In addition, if you're doing a cloud hosted SIP provider, absolutely, and this is true for anyone who's listening in on this, that monitor your vendors, please, 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 because if we've all been there where a cloud provider, something like Slack or 365 might have a hiccup, your coworkers are going to come to you saying, is this down? Well, monitoring your vendors, even monitoring Google, is going to help you achieve that, because that's part of like I'm monitoring my VoIP trunk, because I don't have any ownership of this, but I want to know what the latency is like between that and what that looks like, because the relationship, since we've been on this call, it has spiked. I can see that trend here. And so I want to correlate this with other things in my network using those multi-stack graphs, getting that in that context. So great question.
Thank you. So we have quite a lot of questions from Dilli Maharjan. So if you would like to speak Dilli, I can actually unmute you, so you can actually ask over the voice as well. Until then, I would like to go to another question from Mr. Ujjal. So he has asked a question: can Nagios be integrated with Grafana and security logs ELK stack integration?
Yes, so our Nagios log server is based on Elk, and we've added additional functionality on that stack to provide real-time alerting, customizable dashboard, customizable filters, grok filters, basically ways of taking all of that log data. And we have customers that have like hundreds of gigabytes of data, log data per day, from any different type of source. Think about the servers, the switches, the IoT devices, that if it has the ability to send log data to an IP address or a port, it can be ingested into Nagios log server, where then it can coordinate and actually integrate with Nagios XI to do that. With kind of one of the properties of Elk is that there's some scalability with Nagios log server. It scales with your needs, so you can build up and add on additional instances and have kind of redundancy and load balancer effects for how much data is coming in. Regarding Grafana, we have a lot of customers that are starting to use Grafana integrations. There's some support out there on Grafana's side as far as getting in. Again, Nagios XI is an open book. We have our SQL databases, we have RRD, we have areas and our API endpoints, and we have pieces to be able to extract data and get it into Grafana, Tableau, dashboarding capabilities like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Garrett. So I would like to combine, okay, so I think we got Dilly Maharjan here who has raised his hand. So I am going to allow him to talk. So you are unmuted, Dilly, so you can ask your questions.
So my first question is that I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Okay. So my first question is that, so what is the backend that is being used by the Nagios XI?
So we have Nagios XI running. The engine that runs it is Nagios Core, our that open source stack. It's a LAMP stack that's running on a Linux process. We have several components and different processor pieces that kind of answer to the collection of metric data, if that makes sense. So we run, again, a SQL database for that time-based event and performance ingestion. Does that hopefully answer your question?
Yep. So do I have an option to choose the flavor of the database? So likewise, if
you have the option, we have customers that offload their database to other servers, and it's kind of, while we support that function, if you want to move this to a MariaDB or a Postgres or some other piece to it, we can guide you to a best practice on support, but it's kind of up to your comfortability from there in terms of supporting and really troubleshooting the native language of the the database that you're hoping to achieve there. The most common scenario is that we see the database oftentimes extracted or deferred to a different virtual machine, a different server that's part of a stack that's in someone's environment that they're more comfortable with, that's still based on SQL architecture.
Thank you. The next thing I want to know about is that, is there any way to define some sort of the proxy like setting? Because most of the client in my environment does not allow their servers to be accessed directly. And
Sure.
whenever I need to access the server, I need to go through the jump box and bustin host to access them. So what I'm planning is that, is there any way to install something on the bustin host so that it will collect the information from the servers and push it to the Nagios XI server?
Yeah. So there are a number of ways to do this. And my answer, you'll probably hate me by the end of this Q&A where I'll say it all depends. But it does, our flexibility, speaking to our flexibility and extensibility, I love being able to, say confidently that it all depends on your security, on your infrastructure, and on your customers' requirements and relationship with them. In other words, some customers have direct open VPN or point-to-point or SD-WAN. They have any number of topological network abilities to get in, allowed hosts, IP tables, basically there's, on the network side, we see that from a lot of different angles. But we also see more commonly the proxy question of, I have customers in a volatile or a dynamic environment and they have servers, how do I get them? Maybe the easiest way to start on this adventure is to utilize the NCPA agent that we offer. And that NCPA agent allows you to send data to a Nagios XI system that you have. And there are ways of doing some federation with that, where you could have a publicly addressable or accessible piece or a defined, because if your customers are running static environments, to be able to run, again, it's all gonna, I know I'm kind of problem solving here on the phone, I probably shouldn't do that, but it's just kind of throwing out just some solutions or some ways to think about it, utilizing that passive check, because you can have that passive check from that agent, send all of that information from those servers, the performance, writing scripts to be able to, and plugins, and utilizing them to get into and check for other statuses of components in that architecture of your clients, and bring that up to your Nagios XI instance. And so we see that in a lot of different ways. So I will say thumbs up. It's just, and yes, it's just a matter of what you're comfortable with and what really truly makes sense.
Thank you. One last question, that
Yeah.
if I use a NCPA, it's a NCPA, right?
Yep.
NCPA agent, then do I need to open the multiple ports, or it supports, it runs on the HTTP or HTTPS port?
It runs on HTTPS, and you can customize the ports that you would like, but the ports don't have to necessarily be opened on the firewall of the host or of the whatever the server, laptop, or workstation is on, because you have the ability of sending that data outbound, if that makes sense. So in my laptop, I had the port open, 5693, and I'm doing an active check using that method, but you can have the same performance, you can have the same result by having it sent outbound as well, so you don't have to open up that HTTPS port.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and special side note too, on the passive check piece, is you can actually set up in Nagios XI, it's called freshness alert or freshness check. And what that will do is that it basically says this, I want to receive an alert if that laptop, if that desktop, if your customer's server has not checked in the defined interval that I've set up. So that allows you to kind of get a little bit more active checking scenario where it's pinging and saying, hey, I can't access it. It simulates that in a way, and it says, hey, this has not checked in 30 days or in 5 minutes, that kind of a thing. Yep.
So we can add this some grace period also, right? Because sometimes due to the network latency, we usually do not get the data properly. So in that case, we can set some.
Yep. Yeah, and for example, I have a site that's I'm monitoring, and it's on a cellular connection. And sometimes when the wind blows or the sun is too warm, I don't know, whatever the case is, environmental variable, I don't want to receive an alert every time the ping times out. But I do want to know if it's offline for more than, I think I set the threshold to 10 minutes, because sometimes it even times out in 5 minutes, and I still don't, it's okay to not be in that 5-minute increment. And that's, you know, so it really just depends on the requirements and what SLA targets and the resolution that you're looking to achieve for that. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Diliji, thank you very much for your questions as well. And Garrett, thank you very much as well. So I would actually like to ask you one question myself, Garrett. So I would like to, know some of the, I would say, crazy projects or crazy idea or very interesting use cases, where Nagios has been used for monitoring. If you, can highlight some of those, I definitely think there are quite a lot.
Yeah, honestly, this is what motivates a lot of us at Nagios to just be so enthusiastic about the product, is because we're such an open book protocol, we have the flexibility of getting all of this information in. We see so much, and Anjani, the big piece now is IoT. We're seeing a lot of eccentric or weird, interesting use cases come out of IoT because of the mobility and the flexibility of the physical properties of that. And so we've had customers even use, like a large telecom in the United States, they actually were using, it's very relevant right now, they were using Nagios XI to monitor and map out. They mapped out their, and I can show you on this view here, we have a feature in here called Nagios. And this actually allows you to overlay, for example, you have a picture of your server closet and you can assign, basically representation of what that actually looks like, but mostly, you know, Visio diagrams, things like that, but often good if you have a co-location or a center. But what this telecom company was doing was they actually were using, they mapped out their cellular towers, and they were using the feedback based to know where to dispatch their technicians or where not to, based on the fires, the forest fires that were occurring around those areas. So when one of them went down, they were actually able to heat map and show where the fire was spreading, so they didn't have to, you know, dispatch, and they could actually, they coordinated with the fire departments, the national FEMA, you know, rescue teams. They were using Nagios to basically visualize where that was spreading, because it's really difficult to grab that with all the smoke and the, you know, the overhead satellite imagery, aerial, things like that. So that's a piece. More into some of the more eccentric pieces, I'm actually going to refer to my own instance on this. There's some really interesting pieces relative to this. I kind of created so I have like a little audio player on this. I always thought it was necessary, and this was based on a demand. We were monitoring the audio output. I did this as a POC for a customer who was had a lot of restaurants and service industry, and they were supporting music, or kind of the elevator music and stuff in lobbies. And I was like, well, maybe you should monitor the audio levels themselves, because it's one thing to say, yes, the stream player is online, it's playing music, here's the levels. It's another to actually know whether or not it's submitting. So I was able to create dashboards, and this was kind of my example to them to show that piece. But otherwise, you know, it's kind of fun to be able to monitor even like the temperature in the room, or in the case of, well, I can actually show you here. My host status here is, you can kind of see my IoT collection here. I'm monitoring the fan speeds of, you know, of some of the fans that I'm using for cooling. I'm monitoring my, I have an article out there for the amount of, the abnormalities of my cat's behavior in terms of a motion sensor. So I can actually get a sense, I know this sounds weird, but I can actually get a sense of if there's abnormality to what the cat is doing and action. So I actually have my threshold set up to say, if the cat has not walked over to its litter box in a certain amount of time, flag an alert, or if too many time. With Nagios, it's important to note that thresholds can be set up in many different ways to say a range of, or over under, things like that. We're monitoring the office, our shared office, for and our lobby for activity, human people tracking of how many people are walking through, and being able to do that. I'm monitoring whether or not the mail has arrived, even the refrigerator. So, you know, we talk about, you know, is the refrigerator door opened or closed? I can set this up, and this was one of my first tasks. We had a lunch in our office. All the food went bad, our leftovers went bad, because the door was left open. So I made sure to set the alerts and the thresholds of the temperature readings to make sure that that was happening there. I'm also monitoring the sunlight. So if you're ever curious about what this, you know, can Nagios predict what the sunlight is going to do? Absolutely. I'm tracking the amount of UV, the amount of ultraviolet light that's coming from the sun on any given day. And so I'm actually able to coordinate. Now, this doesn't make much sense here, but where I can show you is this Graph Explorer. I can take on the time stack, I can say IoT, ESP, sunlight meter, and I can start to track out. I think this is more of a depressing metric, is I'm able to actually show how the sun is starting to change now against itself over time, because our sun is setting at a significantly faster rate. So I'm actually able to get that information, you know, in terms of what that looks like. I don't know if this is going to relate too much to my server performance, the cloud cover and power of the sun versus, but it was just an exercise to say, you know, what correlates with what. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of, we had an employee that actually was monitoring his mulch, his garden, for when it was necessary to turn the leaves over, things like that. I'm monitoring the amount of fire in the water heater, the amount of flame that's coming out of that, the water meter itself, making sure the leak, if there's any left the hose on or something like that. Yeah, just a lot of interesting pieces related to that. And we're seeing on a customer level, we're seeing this on a daily basis uptick because of the amount of just different devices and things that are out there that's really relevant now. Think about the amount of the power meter, things like that, and my HVAC. So I was actually able to note when the air conditioner was having issues based on the performance of the heater and the furnace and the air conditioner based on that as well. So yeah, just kind of
Great.
yeah. Great
Yeah,
question.
it's very exciting to see that you are monitoring the fire and then the cat and all these different kind of, it's
Yeah.
quite diversity there, because I'd like to quickly share my experience as well. When I was in Nagios conference back in 2015, there was a lady out there. She wasn't technical at all, and she actually basically does the she keeps the bee. So she was monitoring the beehive using Nagios. I was like,
Yes.
so
Yes.
fascinating.
That's true,
And
because they have cycles, they have patterns, right? And one of the exercises that I had for our company, our team, as a team exercise, and maybe I'll ask the group here who's still attending, how many ways are there to monitor a light bulb? Just a traditional light bulb. Many people, when I ask this question, they say 5. You can't think of more than 5. We came up with, I think, over 30. And it wasn't too obscene, but it was, or like too out of the box or redundant. They were legitimate things. Monitoring the heat of the bulb, monitoring metal expansion, the size of something, monitoring the solar output of some, there's so many different ways. And the reason why that question is important, and the reason why our licensing reflects this in terms of its true cost to value, is we truly believe that monitoring a light bulb, for example, using more than one method, is very vital to your success as an organization, because we want you to see that full 360 approach to monitoring. Is the website up and down? I don't know if I said it, but my favorite example on the monitoring website, we have a national pizza chain, and it's thousands of stores, and delivery, ordering a pizza online is very popular now. So they came to us and they said, we need a solution like yours that does synthetic monitoring. And what that means is, yes, they were monitoring the database, they were monitoring the web stack, the temperature of the server rooms that they were hosting this all in, all of those important, we call them kind of like administration pieces. But then they used the Monitor a Website wizard, which does synthetic transactions, and they were able to order a pizza, a large pizza, 3 toppings, extra large or whatever, and use this fake credit card that's on file. And they did it every 5 minutes. And if it took more than 8 seconds or something to complete that transaction, they knew there was a problem, and they notified the right web team that was responsible for that. Because again, now we're getting into performance of applications, things like that. It's so important to monitor using all of those methods that you wouldn't normally catch on that. So, and actually that's another good use case of just monitoring billing portions. We can't all order a pizza every 5 minutes, but there's certainly ways of of thinking about that in context to your organizations.
great, thanks, Garrett. So there is another question from Rita Khadka. So the question is, how CloudWatch and Nagios monitoring metrics differs?
I love that question. I absolutely love that question, because we're seeing an increase right now of users they adopted CloudWatch, but based on some of the limitations or based on some of the scope of either licensing, especially on the licensing piece, but more on, where the truth is on that data, it's imperative to think about Nagios XI. If you're in as additive, if you're using CloudWatch for a number of automation pieces, and you want to start thinking about getting Nagios XI to do some of those automation pieces based on, again, what we call event handlers. Event handler being something where you can write a script and you can have that script perform any amount of actions. Most common example is if the web server is down, if Nagios XI sees that, then restart the Apache web service, right? HTTPD restart and or service restart, and then it will do that command. And then if it fails or if it succeeds, it can let you know. Why I mention all of this is CloudWatch is great at what it does, but why we're seeing an increase in adoption from AWS customers is sometimes Amazon likes to say that they're up when their sites and their resources are freezing. And a real example of that was exactly that one of our services that we actually as a company pay for from a sales and CRM piece was down. The site, I was monitoring one of our vendors from our Nagios side and it was down. And so I sent a message to the owner of the company and said, hey, just FYI, your website's down. I know this is weird. I shouldn't be monitoring it, but like, I just wanted to let you know as a friendly heads up. And he says, I didn't know. Amazon's monitoring didn't tell me that it was down. And so that's why we talk about hybrid monitoring and getting instances in areas that are positioned strategically so that you can monitor these processes, that you can use the AWS wizards to the EC2 and S3 to get those performance metrics from another source, an unbiased or just a more agnostic approach, because you have other assets that exist outside of Amazon too, keep in mind. And so with Nagios XI, you can monitor all of those devices in one pane of glass and get reporting and correlation associated to that. So very, very good question.
Thanks, Garrett. So there's another question. I think probably we might have to go to a little bit basics. I think there are like few questions which I answered. So what Nagios exactly is, and there was I think another question where is Nagios a security tool, cyber security tool? And now there's another question where it is saying is Nagios intrusion detector as well? So I'd like to summarize this and answer briefly.
How does Nagios XI play into your security practices? And this is another great question that we're seeing a lot more of, especially as we start looking into SIEM solutions and integrations and what that all works with. With Nagios XI and how it operates, both from a physical observability up to an application layer, there are areas of security that Nagios XI absolutely can report on and scale a lot more appropriately with in terms of some of those SIEM solutions and turnkey areas. Again, even if it's additive in terms of saying, okay, it's obviously going to cost threefold or 3 times the amount to have endpoint detection in terms of user login states or SSH queries into a vulnerability scanning or something like that than I can do with Nagios XI. So it really it just depends on what type of security requirements you're looking to have answered in this question and how this plays together. From the architecture perspective, I will say Nagios XI is extraordinarily flexible and accommodating with being able to be deployed in secured, hardened environments and meet those demands with your security and audits and compliance teams. Because it can sit in DMZs, it can sit in proper VLANs or segments of the network and report externally or feed that data to a different instance depending on the requirements. The other piece is when we talk about like port statistics, is it plugged in, is it not plugged in, what is the utilization? In terms of log entry line items, Nagios log server is such a preferred item in the financials, banking, and hospital, healthcare industries because of its ability to do that real-time alerting on some of those anomalies or increase. Think about even failed login attempts on some of your web stack devices or even your workstation endpoints, things like that. I could speak for days on the amount of areas of checkboxes that we've been able to work with customers on to be able to be an addition, a replacement, or their go-to for a lot of the security requirements that they're looking for relative to those pieces. Now, when it comes to, threat detection, pieces like that, that's more along on the lines of an AV solution, things like that. But we can actually take those logs, alert based on them, and be your single source of truth relative to those as well. So it really all just kind of depends on that. But I think as a general kind of to answer that as quickly then I guess is just, yeah, it's just we play really well with answering to and accommodating a lot of these security questions that we get. We see them often, and we're eager to, be able to help.
Great, thank you. There's another question from Santosh. So can Nagios perform its application and services in offline mode or only during online time?
That's a great question. So when we talk about offline mode, perform its application and services. So I'm assuming that that's about that NCPA, the agent, is doing checks potentially, and then that's offloading, or it's storing until it kind of checks in on that side. With the Nagios, with that Nagios cross-platform agent, the NCPA agent, it has the ability to, and you can set it up to do some monitoring in a way that kind of caches some pieces, but it's more or less a way to say that your Nagios XI system should be pretty reliably available. And what we mean by offline, particularly when I hear offline, is not accessible to the internet. So however that works in your organization, we have a lot of customers for security. Think nuclear defense contractors, entire government organizations, entire countries, defense departments. They can't be talking online. They can't be talking out to a network. So offline, to us, we see that in many different ways. And just know that there is an offline availability, that we can truly be offline, and where you would just be talking inside of a local area network or a partition that's comfortable for your security needs in that sense. So it can still log without having to go out to the internet in that sense.
Okay, great. Then is another question from Sudarshan. How Nagios communicate with servers and hosts? Which protocol? What software to be installed in those servers and hosts?
That's a great question. Communicate with servers and hosts. So we are very agnostic in terms of getting data into Nagios XI. We have protocols like we call it Nagios Remote Data Processor, or NRDP. The NRDP piece to this, let me look at the inbound transfer. So here's the fun part, is you can actually have Nagios send data outbound, like I said, to Grafana or Tableau or all these different environments, or even other Nagios XI systems. Kind of think about a multi-tenancy, scalable solution there. Otherwise, we speak a lot of XML, JSON, our direct API curl calls. We speak direct to the SQL database. We, even with our wizards, think about all of the protocols, SNMP, all the versions of SNMP. If you want to run, using SSH logins to be able to get into a system and run presets queries there, we speak databases, we speak HTTP web services, we speak, if the protocol, and here's the best part, if the protocol doesn't exist here, and you're handy in Python, C, Perl, Bash, and it's not anything that's even included by someone else who's written a plugin to communicate with it, you can write a script or a language or a protocol to get that into Nagios. We have guides. We have easy to read user guides that actually get you through to write your own plugin, write your own wizard to be able to communicate to devices. But typically what we find is that we speak all of the protocols that are necessary in your environment that, that can answer to that.
Sure. Thank you. So there is another question, or maybe it's a statement. How about integrating Nagios in system with our cars? So when
Oh,
anyone goes above speed, that may result in risky results. There are chances of
oh,
accident. So I think it's
yeah.
an interesting use case there. Maybe anything that you want to
So,
comment on that?
so there, yeah, I do have a couple things to comment on that. So, Um, and I know I'm problem solving here because I love doing this all day long. So you caught me at my best when we talk about automobiles. So like this is again my own instance here. So I'm monitoring a couple of automobiles, right? Some scooters and some things. So I'm just going to click into one of them here. So when it's on, it's graphing some of this. I'm just monitoring the oil levels, the gas, the battery, the Wi-Fi, things like, or the connectivity to it. But all I did, I mean, it's all going to depend on the device. So this is again, that goes back to that. It all depends, and my answer is usually yes, assuming the device has the capability of getting that data or Nagios receiving that data, requesting it. So where this comes into automobiles, a traditional automobile will have a port known as an OBD2, onboard diagnostic protocol 2 port, very universal, and there are ways of extracting and getting that information from RPMs, speed, fuel consumption, all of that. You could theoretically do fleet management inside of Nagios XI. I was at an IoT conference a year and a half ago, and that was one of the pieces that someone was interested in, and it was actually kind of fun to be able to problem solve and figure out what protocols they're using to be able to get that in. But IoT is a tricky one, right? There's always going to be a protocol to kind of think of. So, but definitely possible. Yeah.
Great. So last few questions. So
Yeah.
there's another question from Ravi Shrest. I assume monitoring is done using IoT devices, and Nagios is used for monitoring those IoT devices to know the pattern. Please correct me if I am mistaken.
Monitoring is accomplished in Nagios using software or hardware, but mainly using software protocols. IoT devices is definitely one piece of the equation. I think of IoT as a great segue or a translator because, and I'll throw this out there, this these UPSs that I have here, these are standard desktop batteries. They don't have the network interface. So the question is, can Nagios monitor it? Does it have an IP address? It does not. Does it have an FTQ? And it can't communicate on the network, only through USB. But setting up an IoT device like a Raspberry Pi, for example, to get that information from USB to a common protocol, HTTP, JSON, XML, an API, SNMP, which is what I'm using here, can absolutely then do that. So you could think of the IoT side of this as a translator of sorts, because temperature is an example of a physical. It's one of 6 or 13 senses that's on the IoT side, and getting that into Nagios XI is as easy as finding a protocol and an IP, an IoT device to do that. But yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Garrett. So what I will do, I'll take 5 minutes of my slot to briefly present about Genese and myself. And I think the rest of the questions, we'll just take it in an informal way when we wrap up the session. Thank you very
Sure.
much for the wonderful session, Garrett.
Yeah,
Now
thank
I'd
you.
like to quickly share my screen.
Yes, can I click stop share then?
Yes, I
Okay.
think, yeah. Perfect. Okay, Pooja, please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Great. So hello, everyone. So myself, I am Anjani Phuyal. I am the global CTO of Genese Solution. And today I'm very proud that, we are able to bring Garrett from US, who is working with Nagios, to present regarding the Nagios, its uses and its use cases. I believe everyone is actually having a wonderful time today. So a brief about myself. So I am MSc Computer and Network Security with distinction from Middlesex University. Did my bachelor's in Electronics and Communication Engineering. So a lot of logos that you see here. So I used to work for these organizations, when I was on my, building my career. So some of the big names, including Rackspace. Through Rackspace, I worked for companies like BBC, ITV, Discovery, Nestle, Unilever. Later, I worked for one of the large US bank called Capital One Bank. And one thing I would say I have done in all of these organizations is, digitization And to do the digitization, monitoring was a fundamental and key necessity. So in one stage or another stage, I have actually used Nagios with, I would say, most of all the organizations actually, in JWT, in Rackspace, in Medicanimal, all of these organizations, I have actually used Nagios. So I mean, you can just think of, through my career of 15 years in tech, I have actually used monitoring tools, and Nagios has been a fundamental monitoring tool on all of these organizations. Some of the feathers on my wings. So I am Microsoft certified trainer from almost last 13, 14 years. I'm one of the global Amazon ambassador as well. And I work with two of the a US organization named Girls in Tech and Women in Big Data to support women, technology, and entrepreneurship. So these organizations, they are actually in Nepal and in various countries in Asia itself. So my relation with Nagios, you can actually see that, I have been using Nagios from, I would say, almost last 10, 12 years itself. So I was, I can say now, I think it's a long time, almost 6 years now. I was Nagios certified administrator and Nagios certified professional back in 2014. And I think all of the inspiration about Nagios I got was when I actually visited Nagios conference in Minneapolis 2015. I heard all the amazing use cases, and it actually gave me a lot of brainstorming and new ideas of where else I can actually use Nagios, what else actually I can monitor. When I see the lady who is not technical at all, using Nagios to monitor Beehive. There was another guy who was monitoring the JCVs and all those different use cases as well. I mean, it's awesome. You can actually do the typical traditional monitoring your servers, networks, switches, routers. I mean, that's given. But then there's a lot of new use cases as well you can actually use. I think Garrett mentioned earlier regarding the monitoring of insurance system. In one of my previous role, I was actually monitoring how many agents got registered, and then querying the SQL database, and then just displaying in the dashboard. It's an awesome use case there. As a company, we basically offer quite a lot of services, and one of the focus I would like to do today is Nagios. So we are very proud to say that we are the only company in Nepal and one of the company in Asia to be a Nagios partner. We actually provide Nagios reselling services, consulting services to your organization need. So if you need, if you have any queries regarding Nagios XI or even Nagios Core as well, we are more than happy to help support you as well to achieve your monitoring results. I would like to highlight, again, Garrett already highlighted some of the, quite a lot of big clients, but I would like to quickly highlight some of the localized clients maybe. In terms of Nepal, we have Nepal Telecom, which is one of the biggest telecom in Nepal, monitoring, using Nagios as their monitoring system. We have Nepalese military as well. I think Garrett already said regarding the US military as well, who is using Nagios. So, I mean, if you think of from the security perspective, from the, I would say the reliability perspective, Nagios has been a backbone for all of these major telcos, major banks, major, I would say the military organizations as well. And some of the other big names like BT, the British Telecom, is one of the biggest telecom in UK as well. IBM, Verizon, Wipro. So you can see a lot of big names there as well. Saying that, these are my details. I'm very active on social media. Facebook, I think I'm almost 5,000, so I may not be able to accept new connection, but LinkedIn, I'm very, very active. If you have any, sales queries or anything, feel free to email me on my email address. It's over here as well. And I'm active on, tweet as well. Yeah, saying that, I would like to thank you everyone for, being here with us. Formally, I would hand it over to Pooja to end the session, and then we can still actually answer some of the questions at the end as well. Thank you, Pooja. You can actually wrap up officially from your side.
Thank you very much, Anjani sir. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, the whole Nagios team. It was an amazing session. Hope you enjoyed it as well. And thank you. We still have about 58 attendees. So thank you for your enthusiasm and interest and staying for about 2 hours.
I think, Pooja, you are not very audible.
We have recently launched polling to get back of the please vote poll. Honestly, thank you very much. I'm so sorry about that.
Okay, sorry, I think Pooja she's having a little bit internet connection problem. Maybe we need Nagios to monitor the internet for
Just,
Pooja as well.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
So yes, that is possible. You can actually monitor your internet uplink as well using Nagios. I think I used to do that for one of my organizations in the past. So the poll has been launched that, would you attend a similar session in future? Please, provide feedback. So it is really going to be helpful for us. And I think a detailed, feedback questionnaire is going to be sent as well, which is going to be sent through email. So please feel free to fill the feedback form. So it is going to be very useful for us in order to tailor the program based upon your need. Okay, so informally, again, there are 2 hands raised. So formally, the program is officially closed. So feel free to drop out if you have any work. If not, I think we'll be doing maybe 10-15 minutes informal to answer some of the questions. So Dilly, you have raised your hand. So I think you are already permitted to talk. You can unmute and speak. Okay, if that's my mistake, then I would allow Dr. Navneet to talk if you have any question that you want to ask.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Anjani and Garrett. Actually, I just missed. Somehow I got busy with my emails. So I'm very sorry that I could not. I was very fascinated by your email that I should be able to attend it. But I just wrote that can I have this? Is a lot of scope for this product in our IIT Roorkee. There are a lot of this thing. You must have heard about this IIT Roorkee, is it?
Myself,
Indian Institute of
yes.
Technology. So I was wondering that how to get started with it. Like your free one is that Ganglia is there, but a lot of things are not available in that. So I was wondering that how Nagios can be implemented in our place. So I mean, just give
Sure.
me some cue that how we can get on with
Maybe
your
I'll let Garrett to, maybe. So IIT, so do you want to talk about IIT Roorkee maybe in 30 seconds, Dr. Navneet? What IIT Roorkee does and what's your use case? So Garrett would be able to respond.
Mm-hmm. Okay, a lot of computing is there. HPCs are also there, and we have some GPU-based individual machines. So students are accessing those things, but the thing is that we want to monitor that whether they are fully utilized or what is the use of these machines. Rather than buying new machines, we want to optimize on that. How we can, optimally utilize the resources which are present. That is one thing. And I think I have not gone through all the things which you must have told today. So networking is another thing. I don't know that is your forte or not. Plus mainly the computing system monitoring. Then we can get into other things like instrumentation of other departments and things like that. But yes.
Yeah. And I think, you had asked the question about the link to the webinar recording too.
Yes.
Yep. Anjani will be able to provide that here. And it's, I did, so you raised a number of good questions, right? As far as getting all of that under one roof, all under one lens. And we absolutely excel at that, especially with respects to the performance of the physical machines and the virtual machines, perhaps as a subsequent containers, VMs, things like that, or even just the bare metal, the host itself, as well as the interfaces that they're communicating out of, as well as the switch stacks and the routers and the network performance as a result. So based on your ability to, or like the Nagios XI's ability and your, the options for you to create thresholds of performance, and keeping in mind, if you want to, I was kind of thinking about it when you were talking about maximizing the GPU and the kind of the horsepower, the performance of each one of these systems. I would actually do and there's a way of doing a threshold variations that allow you to say, instead of the CPU getting an alert if the CPU is over 80% utilization, maybe, and we see this all the time, maybe I want to get an alert if the threshold is below 80%. So this could actually inverse and provide more resolution and more accuracy to what it is you might be trying to achieve, whether it be on the network side or on the host and the GPU and the physical piece nature of that. So having the ability to either monitor all of the hardware stack via an agent, a lightweight agent that you would install on each one of those servers, or using common protocols, WMI, SSH, SNMP, any of those targets. And you mentioned HPE, was it, for the
Yeah, it's HPC, high performance computing.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yep. If there's any type of administration console or command computing, any type of interface that Nagios XI can grab that information to, even better. So yes, we play really well in that environment, in that use case. Yep.
Actually, we are a mix of this thing, heterogeneous environment with Windows as well as Linux.
Sure.
So we want to.
So Dr. Avneet, what I would do, sorry to disturb you. So I think you have registered, so we already have your details. So we will be getting back to you probably tomorrow or Monday. So we can actually take this in details, and then we can actually help you. Yeah. We'll try to see where we can actually help you. Okay, that's great. So I think we sort of answered all the question. So again, I'd like to thank Garrett and Mary for taking your precious time. And I know it was very early in the morning. You guys started, and we have people from pretty much all over the Asia attending today, and maybe some people outside the Asia as well. It's a very wonderful session. We would definitely love to have you again in future. Thank you very much for you and for all the attendees as well. Saying that, I'd like to officially finish the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone.